You're driving down the road, minding your own business, when suddenly you see those flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty, and 1,000 thoughts run through your mind. Whether you've done something wrong or not, being pulled over by police is stressful. But here's the thing, knowing your rights during a traffic stop can make all the difference between a routine interaction and a situation that spirals out of control. Most people have no idea what they're legally required to do during a traffic stop and what they can actually refuse. Police officers know the law, and unfortunately, some may use your ignorance against you. That's why today, we're going to cover 20 critical rights you need to know the next time you get pulled over. This information could protect you legally, financially, and even physically. So let's dive in. Right number one, you have the right to remain silent. This is probably the most important right you have, and it applies from the very moment that officer approaches your window. You've heard it a million times in movies and TV shows, but do you actually understand what it means in practice? You are not required to answer questions beyond providing your license, registration, and proof of insurance. If an officer asks where you're going, where you've been, what you're doing, or whether you've been drinking, you can politely decline to answer. A simple "I prefer not to answer questions" is perfectly legal. Many people think staying silent makes them look guilty, but here's the truth. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Even innocent statements can be twisted or misinterpreted. You're not being rude by exercising this right. You're being smart. Right number two, you must provide identification, registration, and insurance. Now, while you have the right to remain silent about most things, you do have legal obligations during a traffic stop. In every state, you're required to provide your driver's license, vehicle registration, and proof of insurance when asked by law enforcement. This is not optional. Refusing to provide these documents can result in arrest. However, and this is important, you're only required to provide these specific documents. You're not required to consent to searches, answer investigative questions, or comply with requests that go beyond these basics. Know the difference between what you must do and what you're being asked to do. Right number three, you can record the interaction. This is huge, and it's a right that more and more people are exercising. You have a constitutional right to record police officers performing their duties in public. This includes traffic stops. Your smartphone is one of the most powerful tools you have to protect yourself. If you feel comfortable doing so, you can inform the officer that you're recording, though you're not legally required to in most states. Place your phone somewhere visible, like on your dashboard, so the officer can see it's just recording and not something else. Police body cameras don't always capture everything, and having your own recording can be invaluable if disputes arise about what happened. However, don't let recording interfere with complying with lawful orders, and never become physically aggressive or obstructive while trying to record. Right number four, you have the right to refuse a search of your vehicle. This is where many people unknowingly give up their rights. If an officer asks to search your car, you can say no. Just because they ask doesn't mean they have the legal authority to search. A simple "I do not consent to searches" is all you need to say. Now, there are exceptions. If the officer has probable cause, meaning they can point to specific facts that suggest evidence of a crime is in your vehicle, they can search without your consent. If you're arrested, they can search. If something illegal is in plain view, they can search. But absent these circumstances, they need either your consent or a warrant. Even if you have nothing to hide, consenting to a search sets a precedent and takes time. More importantly, officers sometimes claim to find things that weren't there, or something innocent might appear suspicious. Protect yourself by politely declining. Right number five, you don't have to get out of your car unless ordered to do so. There's a common misconception that you must exit your vehicle whenever an officer asks. The reality is more nuanced. The Supreme Court has ruled that officers can order you out of your car during a traffic stop for safety reasons, even without suspicion of criminal activity. So while you don't have to volunteer to get out, if an officer orders you to exit the vehicle, you must comply. Refusing a lawful order to exit can lead to arrest. However, if you're simply asked, "Would you mind stepping out?" that's a request, not an order, and you can politely decline. Pay attention to whether it's phrased as a question or a command. Right number 6. Passengers have rights too. If you're a passenger in a vehicle that gets pulled over, you also have rights, though they're slightly different from the drivers. Passengers are generally not required to provide identification unless the officer has reasonable suspicion that the passenger has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime. In some states, passengers must identify themselves, but in many others, they don't. Passengers also have the right to remain silent and the right to refuse searches of their belongings. If you're a passenger and want to leave, you can ask, "Am I free to go?" If the officer says yes, you can walk away. If they say no, you're being detained, and you should comply, but remember everything we're discussing about your rights. Right number 7. You have the right to know why you were stopped. Officers are required to have reasonable suspicion that you violated a traffic law before pulling you over. You have the right to ask why you were stopped, and the officer should provide a reason. If they can't or won't tell you, that's a red flag. Document this. The reason for the stop is crucial because it determines what else the officer can legally do. If you were stopped for a broken taillight, the officer can't extend the stop indefinitely to investigate unrelated matters without additional reasonable suspicion. Knowing why you were stopped helps you understand what's legal and what isn't as the interaction progresses. Right number 8, the stop must be reasonable in duration. A traffic stop can't last forever. The Supreme Court has ruled that an officer can only detain you for the time necessary to handle the matter for which you were stopped. This means writing a ticket or issuing a warning. If the officer extends the stop to bring in drug dogs, wait for backup without reason, or conduct fishing expeditions trying to find evidence of other crimes, and this extends the stop beyond the time it takes to handle the traffic violation, your rights may be violated. Of course, determining what's reasonable can be subjective, but if a stop for a broken taillight turns into a 30-minute interrogation without any new reason for suspicion, something's wrong. Right number 9, you can refuse field sobriety tests. If an officer suspects you're driving under the influence, they might ask you to perform field sobriety tests. These are the tests where you walk in a straight line, stand on one leg, follow a pen with your eyes, and so on. Here's what most people don't know. These tests are voluntary. You can refuse them. There are no legal penalties for refusing field sobriety tests in most states. These tests are subjective, and even sober, people can fail them due to nerves, medical conditions, or poor coordination. Officers often use them to build a case against you. However, and this is important, refusing a chemical test like a breathalyzer or blood test is different and usually carries penalties like license suspension due to implied consent laws. But the roadside physical tests, you can say no. Right number 10, you have the right to refuse a breathalyzer test, but there are consequences. When you got your driver's license, you agreed to something called implied consent. This means you consented to chemical testing if an officer has reasonable grounds to believe you're impaired. However, you can still refuse. The catch is that refusing typically results in automatic license suspension, often for longer than if you'd failed the test. You might also face other penalties. Some states make refusal a separate criminal offense. Whether to refuse is a personal decision that depends on your situation. If you've had nothing to drink, taking the test clears you. If you've had a few drinks, the calculus gets more complicated. Just know that you technically can refuse, but it's not without consequences. Right number 11, you're protected against unreasonable detention. The Fourth Amendment protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures, and that includes being detained for longer than necessary. Once the purpose of the stop is complete, meaning the officer has run your information and either given you a ticket or a warning, you should be free to go. If you're unsure whether you're still being detained, ask clearly, "Am I free to go?" If the answer is yes, you can leave. If the answer is no, ask, "Why am I being detained?" The officer must provide specific and articulable facts for continuing to detain you. "I just want to ask a few more questions" isn't enough. Document everything if this happens. Right number 12, you don't have to answer questions about citizenship or immigration status. This is particularly important for many people. During a routine traffic stop, You're generally not required to answer questions about where you were born or your immigration status. Traffic stops are about traffic violations, not immigration enforcement, though the reality is more complex in border regions and with certain state and local agreements with federal immigration authorities. If you're uncomfortable answering these questions, you can politely decline. If you're not a U.S. citizen and don't have a green card, carrying your immigration documents is recommended because you may be required to show them to immigration officers. But a standard traffic stop by local police is different. Right number 13. You have the right to see the officer's warrant. If an officer claims they have a warrant to search your vehicle or arrest you, you have the right to see that warrant. A warrant must be signed by a judge and must specifically describe what or who is to be searched or seized. If an officer says they have a warrant but won't show it to you, that's suspicious. Don't physically resist, but make it clear that you're not consenting and that you want to see the warrant. If they proceed without showing you, remember every detail so you can report it later. False claims about having warrants do happen, and you're within your rights to verify. Right number 14. You're protected from excessive force. Officers are only permitted to use the amount of force reasonably necessary to accomplish lawful objectives. During a routine traffic stop, there's rarely any justification for physical force, unless you're physically resisting, fleeing, or posing a threat. If you're complying with lawful orders and an officer uses force against you, that's potentially excessive force, which violates your constitutional rights. If this happens, do not resist in the moment, as that can escalate the situation and give the officer justification for more force. Comply, survive the encounter, and report it immediately afterward. Document all injuries with photos and medical records. Right number 15, you can have a witness present for some interactions. If you're asked to step out of your vehicle for field sobriety tests or questioning, you can ask if a passenger can remain nearby as a witness. Officers might deny this request, especially if they claim safety concerns, but it doesn't hurt to ask. Having a witness can be valuable. Similarly, if you're being searched, having someone record or witness the search can protect you from false accusations about what was found or how you behaved. This right is more limited than others, and officers often have discretion to separate people for safety or investigative reasons, but it's worth knowing you can at least request it. Right number 16. You're protected from discriminatory stops. Racial profiling and discriminatory traffic stops are illegal. Officers are supposed to have legitimate, articulable reasons for stopping you that are based on traffic violations or reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, not on your race, ethnicity, religion, or other protected characteristics. If you believe you were stopped because of discrimination, document everything: the time, location, officer's name and badge number, what was said, and any witnesses. File a complaint with the police department and consider consulting with a civil rights attorney. This is a serious violation of your constitutional rights, and while it can be hard to prove, patterns of discriminatory stops can lead to significant legal action against police departments. Right number 17. You have the right to medical attention if injured. If you're injured during a traffic stop, whether in an accident that prompted the stop or due to actions during the stop itself, you have the right to request medical attention. Officers have a duty to provide or summon medical help for people in their custody who need it. If you're injured and this request is denied or delayed, that's a serious issue. Make sure to report this and seek medical attention as soon as possible afterward. Document your injuries thoroughly and make sure medical records clearly note that the injuries occurred during a police encounter. Right number 18, you can file a complaint about officer conduct. If an officer violates your rights, behaves unprofessionally, or does something inappropriate during a traffic stop, you have the right to file a complaint. Every police department has a process for this, usually through internal affairs or a civilian review board. Get the officer's name and badge number during the stop if possible. Write down everything that happened as soon as you can while it's fresh in your memory. File your complaint promptly. While some people are cynical about whether complaints lead to accountability, they do create a record, and patterns of complaints against particular officers can lead to consequences. Additionally, if you later pursue legal action, Having filed a complaint strengthens your case. Right number 19, you have the right to an attorney. If a traffic stop escalates beyond a simple ticket and you're being arrested or extensively questioned about potential criminal activity, you have the right to an attorney. Invoke this right clearly. I want to speak to my attorney, or I want a lawyer. Once you invoke this right, questioning must stop until your attorney is present. Don't let officers talk you out of this right by saying things like, "We just want to clear this up," or "If you have nothing to hide, why do you need a lawyer?" Innocent people need lawyers too, because the legal system is complex, and anything you say can be misunderstood or used against you. Your right to an attorney is fundamental, and exercising it does not make you look guilty. Right number 20, you have the right to refuse to sign a ticket, but it's not wise. Technically, in most states, refusing to sign a traffic ticket can result in arrest because the signature isn't an admission of guilt. It's just a promise to appear in court or pay the fine. The ticket tells you this. So while you have the right to refuse, exercising this right means you'll likely be arrested and taken to jail where you'll have to post bond. The signature doesn't mean you're admitting you did anything wrong. You can still fight the ticket in court. So unless you want to turn a simple traffic ticket into an arrest, it's better to sign than contest it later if you disagree. Let's wrap this up. Traffic stops are one of the most common interactions people have with law enforcement, and they can go smoothly or they can go very wrong. The difference often comes down to knowing your rights and how to assert them respectfully. Remember, being polite and calm doesn't mean giving up your rights. You can be respectful while still protecting yourself legally. The key is knowing the difference between what you're legally required to do and what you're being asked to do as a favor or compliance tactic. Always keep your hands visible, don't make sudden movements, and if you're reaching for your license or registration, tell the officer what you're doing before you do it. Stay calm even if the officer is aggressive or rude. Your goal is to get through the encounter safely and legally. You can address violations of your rights afterward through proper channels. If your rights are violated during a traffic stop, document everything, get witness information if possible, and consult with an attorney who specializes in civil rights or criminal defense. Many attorneys offer free consultations and can tell you if you have a case. Knowledge is power, and now you're armed with information that most people don't have. The next time you see those flashing lights, you'll know exactly what you're required to do and what you can refuse. Stay safe out there, know your rights, and don't be afraid to exercise them. Your future self might thank you.